Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Luain Press podcast. Today, I'm here with Chris Emery, um, an English poet, and I just want to read a bit of Chris's biographical note here on the back of his latest work. So, Chris Emery is from Manchester, born in 1963. He is a director of Salt, which is an independent trade publisher, and is the former director of operations and director of development for the Shrine of Our Lady in Walsingham in North Norfolk. He's published three collections of poetry, a writer's guide, an anthology of art and poems, and edited selections of Emily Bronte, Keats, and Rossetti. So a lot of work been done over the years, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, it shows. I'm only 22. Look at me.
No way, you didn't look a day over 22 at all. No. Yeah, kept going, kept going. So where did it begin then? I suppose we may as well start with the beginning. I suppose how did you get into it?
Yeah, I think, well, probably like most people, I started when I was a kid, so I was I was thinking about this a lot a few months back. And I think it probably began in primary school. And I had this I was at this kind of rather strict primary school. It was a convent-run primary school in North Manchester. And I think that I got addicted to humorous poetry as a kid. So I think that's probably where the kind of bug started. And I've got this sneaking suspicion, but no evidence, that I started writing when I was probably about 11, 10 or 11, something like that. And then when I went to secondary school, that's when it really kind of kicked in, and we went away on a kind of history trip to Warwick Castle in Warwickshire, and there was we were all shown this dungeon that's called an oubliette, and I ended up writing this poem, and it won a school prize.
Oh, wow.
And I think that was one kind of facet that I was given permission. It was because it's such an unusual art to get into. Most people have very peculiar routes into it, but I think that was kind of mine.
Yeah.
And I had a brilliant English teacher who was he was temping actually, and he came in and he was giving us really good prompts for creative writing that were based around. One of them was based on Bruegel paintings, but we used to also have to read out loud. And we were doing this one afternoon, and some of the lads at the back were larking about and bored, yawning, farting. And he had a book in his hands, and he threw it through the window, and the window shattered.
Smashed the window.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah. And the window shattered, and there was a kind of absolute silence and astonishment. And then in the silence, there was this little knock at the door, and the headmaster put his head around the door and said, "Could I have a word?" and this chat kind of went out, and I think that was the beginning of the end for him. But what it really showed me was that that language mattered, and that people could be passionate about it. And I think from that point on, I was hooked.
Jeez,
So I think that's the origins of it. I suspect that's the beginning of it all.
what a smashing intro. That's incredible. Yeah, like I'm an English teacher as well, and yeah, that's whoever that temp teacher was. He sounds incredible. And like I don't know, like you said, he probably didn't last much longer. But geez, if he inspired yourself, so maybe he did his job right,
He certainly did. I mean, I kind of hope he did, actually. I kind of hope he did kind of push through and carry on, because he wasn't, he wasn't a loon. He was just really, he really cared.
Yeah.
And, that matters. I think if you see that in somebody, I mean, this is I suppose it's part of our job, really. If you it can impart that passion or that understanding that, it's there for you.
Yeah. Well, at least he didn't throw the
access.
book at the students, I mean, because I'm sure
No,
back
but
then
I mean
probably
that used to happen with others.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
Oh
no,
my God.
no, he didn't. No, not at all. And I think he was called Deacon. I seem to remember Mr. Deacon, I think. but it's it's a long, long time ago. Anyway, I owe him a tremendous debt.
Yeah. Jeez,
So there we are.
that's incredible. Wow. What a story. Yeah, maybe I should try that in my own classroom. Just mill a bucket through the window.
No, no.
No. Um, very good. So yeah, I suppose this is we're here today mainly to talk about modern fog. Um, so this isn't something that was just done overnight. This was years in the making, I believe. These
Yeah,
poems.
that's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I my last collection, the one that preceded this was a book called The Departure, and it was a departure in lots of senses because I physically moved from Cambridge where I was living and where I'd set up my publishing company with my wife. And we kind of we were going through, as everybody does in publishing, we were kind of going through a financial crisis, and so we thought we'll sell up, move, and maybe it'll starting afresh will help things, and it did. So there was this kind of element of leaving things behind, and I felt at the time I was entering some kind of exile, an internal exile in England. And so there was this element to it, but also there was a tremendous departure in style and the kinds of writing that I was interested in. When my first two collections were kind of really quite experimental, and I was very interested in a movement called the British Poetry Revival, and I was interested in lots of American movements like language poetry, and so I was kind of raiding those for. I was getting, I had this tremendous sense of urgency in these early collections, and then the departure was a kind of a fracture from that, and I wanted to kind of get back to some. I wanted to kind of be more amenable to the reader.
Mm.
I think that's what I really wanted. And this collection was being, I mean, it was being written from the early 1990s actually, but none of the poems were finding a home because I had these, I had some, I suppose, more kind of, I don't know if you'd call it progressive, but I had this kind of ideological fix on certain kinds of writing, but I was doing this other stuff on the side. So I suppose just before lockdown, it was probably about 7 years ago, I started to kind of draw this collection together. And during the past, I suppose, 3 or 4 years, it got a head of steam, and it suddenly kind of coalesced into what you've read, really.
You said the last collection was called A Departure, but I think, am I right in saying you said this one felt like an arrival?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that where the departure still has, I suppose it was almost like that was the beginning of the journey in a way, and I felt some sense of association from where I live. I've lived here for 13 years in North Norfolk on the English coast in a place called a region known as East Anglia. And we're right on this. There's a bump that sticks out on the east coast of England, and we're at the very, very top of that. And so it felt kind of very far away. But this book kind of felt like I was home, really. And I mean, it's very much, as you will have gathered, it's very much about place, and place is very important in my writing. And it's not all Norfolk. There's bits all over the place. But so I did feel very much like I was. It was an arrival in a I suppose a new state of mind, and also a new kind of poetics, really. Um, Something that I mean, I worked very hard to try and write things that I hope people can understand, and that are no less complex in their kind of philosophical preoccupations than as my early work, but are more accessible, and not in a bland way, but
Yeah,
that people can get into them.
yeah,
So that was the aim, anyway.
yeah. They're very colorful poems, and but there is huge depth to them, and I have to say you did. I'd say you doubled my vocabulary. There's so many words I did not even, and I know I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of this, but I can't even. Well, I'll spell it Queulure, cracular.
Crackle, yeah, it's the
Uh,
surface of a painting. Yeah,
the little
yeah,
sort of like fine lines yeah, I was like,
that's
wow,
right.
there's a word for that. I was like, that's incredible.
Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah,
absolutely.
little things like that. But probably the poem that struck me the most. it probably is in the heart of the book. So at Saint Helens, Randworth, it's sort of
Yeah,
a 12-part meditation on
yeah,
your time in the church.
yeah.
So I was doing loads of googling on the church and stuff. But it's kind of there's a lot to unpacking. But my sort of gathering is that is this a place that you sort of went to and tried to sort of like you describe climbing the steps of the tower and but it seems like when you get to the top you don't quite find what you're looking for and then you sort
Absolutely.
of come back down again and even as you say as you step aside to let the people up and then you descend down the ladder and you kind of meet eyes with them and the false smile and things like that and then come down again. Yeah, it's so there's a sense of I suppose I wonder, are you religious? I wonder, is that kind of influence? Does that influence your poems
Yeah,
at all?
yeah. Yes, I am. Yeah, I mean, I'm a Catholic. I mean, my background is it is an Irish Catholic. You know, I mean, I come from Manchester, and like most of the north of England, about 10% of the north of England is Irish. So my, my grandparents were Irish, and I was brought up as a Catholic at a time in the 1970s when there's still quite a bit of kind of sectarianism in the north of England. So I've carried that, and like most people, when I was in my teens, I kind of left it all behind, and was absolutely convinced that there was nothing, and then in later life, I'm not so sure, so in a way that there's an element in the book that, I mean, I don't want it to sound like it's kind of, crazy religious, but there is this kind of, for me, there is this sense of an accommodation with a faith I was kind of brought up in and rejected and then have, kind of come back to. And part of the timeline of the book coincided with me taking up a job actually in a Protestant shrine in Norfolk, a very ancient place. Walsingham was the most important shrine in medieval England. It was more important than Canterbury because it was a Marian shrine. It wasn't a shrine to a saint. And so I was very lucky to kind of get this job there. And I think some of the experience of that helped me. It helped me overcome my own prejudices, and it was, I think the kind of I think that, I don't want to sound too hammy, but there was a kind of spiritual journey going on, and I think that uh, that enters the text as well. And it doesn't. I don't really want to come down on any sides in a way. I wanted to leave the ambivalence of it all, and I think most people's lives, if they're interested in spirituality, are a mix of belief and disbelief, and we kind of oscillate. So you're always on this kind of pendulum.
Yeah,
And I wanted to try and to capture that, but also to respect it too, because I do have tremendous respect for people that actually work in the church. Um, I mean, they've been through, of course, horrendous
yeah,
times, and there's been a lot to rectify. But those, they deal with things that other parts of society don't deal with very well,
mm,
and they genuinely care for people and help people at very needful parts times in their life.
yeah,
So the poems are kind of about that. I hope they're honest in that they don't, they don't. I'm not proselytizing. I'm just saying what my experience was.
yeah, yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah, I think yeah, like I often find myself in that state as well. Like I did theology in college for 3 years. And you do find yourself as in that pendulum. And you can see sometimes you go through these experiences of like you might sort of really feel like wow, maybe there is I don't know something out there that's looking out for you. But then some days you like pendulum swings and then you feel maybe like you're not so sure, and some things can happen. But
Yeah.
there's a line that I wrote it down that struck me as well. When you're talking about the church, you say 600 years of stone um, that break upon the modern fog, and that was interesting. For me, that was kind of saying, um, is there something to be found in the likes of say churches, for instance, um, that will help us see through the modern fog? I suppose that's,
Absolutely. That's exactly it. Absolutely that. I mean, I mean, aside from my experience of working at the shrine, I'm in a very fortunate part of the world because in North Norfolk in England, we have the largest number of medieval churches anywhere in the world. And there are, 600, 600. Actually, I think there might be closer to 1,000, in fact.
oh my God.
And so I spend a lot of time touring around them, I used to tour around them literally as a tourist, and then I started to tour around them with an active interest in what
As a
what
pilgrim.
people believe. Yeah, as a pilgrim, and looking at these, particularly when you see Renaissance paintings in there. I mean, there are still a lot of extant rood screens, and they're amazing that you can kind of walk in and look. You're stepping back into this mind from the kind of 12th to 14th centuries. And we think that they're, in one sense, they're kind of very close to us, and in another, they're very, very far away. And you kind of look at them through the prism of art, for example, but actually for them, it was a prism of belief. And so I loved the way that you can kind of discover this other sense of the world and being in the world. And in a way, I mean, theology, I think, does this actually. It gives you two worlds, the world that you're in and this alternate world that you that you can kind of navigate, that has moral implications and love, and it gives you a language and a way to reason your way through that. So the churches, form this kind of repository of experience, and so I love them. I absolutely love them. But I
Mm.
went a step. I went one step further, and became interested in, liturgy and, what was actually going on, what the actual practices and beliefs were. And that's been a fascinating. I mean, I'm still on that journey, and that's been fascinating, for
Mm.
me.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. And a lot of the poems are nature poems, but then you have this kind of, like I said, the big sort of the meditation on the church, and then you've got poems that are just set in like a car park, you know. Um,
Yeah,
and I suppose like the modern fog, this the title. I mean, are you suggesting that everyone alive at the moment is in a sort of a is lost, or is that what you feel, or
I think that. Well, I think, without being too arch, I think it's multi-layered. So there's one element which the modern fog is, what in theology you'd call disordered, disordered thinking. And so, there's one element about that we live in a world that is, difficult to grasp. People feel increasing sense of dissociation from the modern world. There's very little, there's a lot of denial of ideas and experiences, but no real coherent philosophy about, how we move and how we can move forward. And I think that's accelerated with technology. So part of in a way, the nature poem aspect is a kind of pilgrimage too. It's the kind of restitution you can experience, by actually being physically being in the world.
Hmm.
So there's that aspect, and also fog is prevalent where I live. We get lots of fog pouring in off the sea. So it's mental fog, it's spiritual fog, it's ethical fog, it's climate, and climate change. It's all these things are kind of, I hoped were being kind of brought together really in the title, and in this idea that, that somehow or other we're all navigating it, whether we like it or not. We're all stuck in the modern fog,
Yeah.
and we have to seek clarity somehow.
Mm.
And I'm I don't mind how anybody gets by, and they've got my support if they're struggling.
Mm. Yeah. No, it's cool. Yeah. And it's true. Yeah. I mean, you have a bad day. They say the best thing for it, go out for a walk. Walk through nature,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and even the church. And as well, I love like I love that whole idea of climbing the church. And even though you climb to the top, you still don't quite find what you're looking for. You're still on the journey. It's not so much a journey of like a physical structure. It's a journey in yourself. Like I like that idea. Um,
yeah,
and even in the car park, that you don't have to be in a sort of a lofty place like a church. You could be, as you said, somewhere like, like a car park or anywhere like that.
Well, you can be anywhere and experience these things. You don't have, I mean, you don't have to be in a medieval
Yeah,
church,
that's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful as they are.
yeah, it's
And
true.
I'm a great believer that you can tap into this. It's like, I think that poetry, I think that literature in general is like this. The great thing about it is, we all have this one life, and we try and work out what we're going to do with it. And but actually through literature, you're enabled to live multiple lives at the same. It's like your own personal multiverse.
Yeah, yeah,
And so books acts, books are these gateways into other ways of being and thinking, and that's just a massive gift to have. It creates empathy and understanding, and
yeah.
so that's the game I'm in.
It's interesting you say a gift there. I was talking to actually the previous podcast I did. Actually, he was also published by Arc as well. Tony Curtis. I don't know if you know him. Tony
Oh
Curtis.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, but he was telling me, and I didn't know this, but he said that the Gaelic word or the Irish word for poem is dawn, Dan, and dawn actually translates literally to a gift. You know,
yeah,
a gift.
yeah.
So,
Well,
um,
yeah, I absolutely think they are.
yeah. But it's interesting. It kind of makes more sense now. I wasn't aware of your Irish kind of background, but there's one poem. Was it Heritage? I think it was Heritage, page 58. You make a reference to Danu. No, it wasn't Heritage. What poem?
Now I know which poem you're
Oh yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
Come dancing.
Yeah,
That was it. Come dancing. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Um, so
yeah,
you see, I might read it here. So when you hitch up your braided dress to mark a cornier and follow a tune, in old light across town, below wet hills and town soot, or soot, whatever you want to say, and by the dogs of the town, let our sweet mothers know you will come dancing. And as you whirl by crossroads and fields of beets and peas, they will come to watch and draw you on to conifers, safe at the half-lit ridge. You'll see that every woman steps through the shape of Danu.
yeah.
So that was
That was a
interesting.
great reading. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, yeah. You must be in tune somewhat with that kind of heritage as well. In order, like, what made you kind of bring in that sort of mythology there, or um,
Um, well, yeah, I mean, I have always been interested in that. Now, I mean, I'm interested in. I mean, I've literally just come back from Greece actually, and
oh,
we did a fantastic tour of the Acropolis, and we went to Delphi, my wife and I, and um, and that was an astonishing experience. And I've always been fascinated by the way that we create our own gods. And it was great because after doing kind of classical Greece, and looking at the Rome and Byzantium, and we then traveled north to an area of Greece called Meteora, where there are these mountains that I think they're limestone, and the monks in the must have been about the 1300s, perhaps a little earlier, started to build monasteries on the sides of these mountains, and then as they were invaded, of course, by the Ottomans, and so they moved up and up and up until they built these monasteries on the very top of these mountains, and we went touring those. There are about 26, I think, in existence, and about six of them are open. So these all these legacies of different gods and has always and mythology has always fascinated me. And so the poem about Dano, I really wanted to write about the kind of shared experience. I really wanted to try and write a poem. This sounds terrible. I wanted to try and write a poem about women and shared
it's not
experience of
terrible.
what
It's not. That's not bad.
what gets passed on. And so, I mean, I can't argue that I don't have any field experience, but but I wanted to kind of try and project into that whole sense of daughters and mothers and the passage of time and what gets treasured and nurtured. So that's where that kind of poem came from. And it's also, I mean, the whole collection is littered with pilgrimages and moments of transition, kind of liminal moments. And I want that, so it's another one of those. It's another one of those poems about transition, which I'm kind of obsessed with.
Yeah.
So, so that's where that comes from, I think.
Um, I wonder, is there any poems, or any poem that you'd like to maybe read to us from the collection, if you have it handy?
Sure, sure, I'll be happy to. I'll read. Uh, I'm tempted to. I'll read. Yeah, I'll read something called Cow Parsley. So another aspect of the collection is I love writing. I like writing about things at the edges of life and things that aren't perhaps particularly treasured. And there's nothing more ubiquitous than cow parsley, especially at this time of year. The lanes are filled with it. So this is a poem called Cow Parsley, and it's for another poet called Rory Waterman, who's got a terrific new collection out. Cow Parsley, that you can't easily move through while wet May dies, vulgar and disconsolate and heavy scented, ghost fringe of unadopted lanes, nova of hedgerows. And here you are again, so common and abundant, enjoying the florid shade. You fill it briefly, which tells us all of being young, if you can remember the flurry, the hustle, all that sweet showiness we go through while May dies. And another season crams its heat into the center of you, grown so tall, then suddenly it is over.
Yeah. Wow. Um, Geez, so much from just cow parsley, amazing. There's a little thing that's, oh, I see it there on page 72. Yeah. Suddenly it's all over. Yeah, it that reminds me of, and it's interesting actually now that I'm just after noticing this really the tail end of the collection, because there's about 70 odd pages, but the last few pages you'll see there's a poem called Beginnings. There's a poem called The Start of It, and then you've got Newbies as well, which really I actually really liked. And it's actually kind of sad in a way, but it's beautiful at the same time. Newbies. Let me just see if I can find it here. Newbies. I can't find it now.
It's on 63, page 63.
Oh, 63. There we go. By the way, what does NCP stand for?
It's National Car Parks.
Ah,
It's
over car parks.
it's
Yeah, I was wondering. I didn't know.
it's the actual company that run car parks in the
Yeah.
UK.
When I was looking at it, I thought of NPC. I don't know if you're familiar with that acronym or that abbreviation.
No.
My students sometimes call me NPC. It stands for a non-playable character from a video game. Uh, yeah, just a sort of a sort of a default AI creature that walks around and just takes people. Uh, I saw that. That's maybe yeah, but Newbie was beautiful. Maybe would you mind reading actually Newbies because I just
No, not at all.
you know
No, of
it's
course.
you
Of
do a
course.
better job than
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, this is a poem about I love writing poems about driving.
yeah.
And so this is a poem about driving around in Norfolk. Newbies. Driving for the first time in months. We're out in cream air, old roads, lobbed estates seeping by the rim of each roundabout, the weedy local bypass, a single show house empty. We keep our moss-rimmed windows down to trap the disembodied birdsong, our foreign news for miles. Let's imagine we are far, far from death, from the declivities and grey roses of death, and rushing by grunting farm compactors, a sweet smell of pig shit, racing silent wheat. We'll learn to treasure mulch sheets and beets, our thighs sticking to the vinyl seats like this, and debating some sort of graceless future, one we never hoped to drive through, with blind maps, prepared to capture us like town wreckage, hoping to escape from our age as age envelops us.
Mm. It's literally like trying to drive away from something that you can't escape from. Yeah, it's kind of but it's brilliant at the same time. Of that even though sort of like you said, like age is chasing you, it's still like you're just keep going. Keep power on. Doesn't matter. Like it's that kind of thing. You're just determined to. And it's full of life, which is great. And the sweet smell of pig shit as well. Uh, which is lovely.
I love the smell of pigs.
Yeah. I don't know where it was the other day. I got out of my car and there was a smell of horse manure in the air, and I was like, you suck it in, like, really.
Yeah, you do.
Keeps you going. Yeah.
You do,
You get a kick,
absolutely.
get a kick out of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
totally. Yeah, I
it's,
love that part of being in the country.
yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. So no, it's a lovely poem. Yeah. And there's so many as well, and there's so many to um a lot of things to meditate, in each one. It's one you can always poems you can always come back to, which is brilliant. But I wanted to. I'm just conscious of time here because we only have about 7 minutes left. So tell us a bit about Salt. You're the
Sure.
director of Salt, which is a
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
publishing.
I started Salt with a poet friend called John Kinsella. He's from he's from Western Australia, and John was a, a fellow at Churchill College in Cambridge, and we met absolutely, I mean, decades ago, and we became pals. I think on a bulletin board actually initially, and we started working together. At this point, I was a director of Cambridge University Press, and so I hooked up with John. We had a coffee in the kind of senior common room at Churchill, and that I mean that was great fun. And from there, we decided we'd have a go at launching some poetry anthologies. And so we started work. None of them saw the light of day. And but it was the origins in it must have been around 1998. This actually, it was the origins of Salt. And in '99 we started properly pulling together a shape for a business. And he and his agent, a guy called Clive Newman, we kind of signed up together as a partnership to start publishing, and we prepared 4 collections of poetry. We're going to change the world at this point. That was the battle plan. Do something radical, find new poetries, introduce people to poetry from around the world, not just from Britain. And we started publishing, and my wife came on board almost immediately and started to help administer the business. Clive pulled out pretty soon, and then John left. He was too busy with his own career, and so my wife and I, Jen, decided to kind of push on. We set it up as a company, and we ran it as a poetry press for quite a few years before the money ran out.
Oh,
And it's a tough old game. The audiences come and go, and so we had quite a tough time, and we had to kind of drive ourselves out of it. So we diversified into fiction, and by the mid noughties, we were publishing short stories, the occasional novel, and then we hit the buffers again, and moved. That's when we moved to Norfolk, and left Cambridgeshire and went through this big transition. And then we went wholesale into literary fiction, and we kind of parked. We had to park poetry because it wasn't contributing anything really to the bottom line. And so we moved into literary fiction, and we had an absolutely astonishing few years. I mean, there was this extraordinary growth, and we had a very good fortune with a Booker Prize nomination. And then we repeated that a few years later with another one, and then we had a series of books that were received. We got into the habit of winning awards. I wish we were in that habit now. And it was fantastic. And then, as with all publishing, you have these moments where your star is rising, and then your star wanes. And then, of course, COVID struck, and Well, Brexit struck first, which was a complete disaster for the business.
Yeah.
Um, and then we got hit by the pandemic, and then we've been hit over here by the cost of living crisis. I mean, I know you've got your own challenges in Ireland, but those have been kind of, particularly tough things to kind of navigate through. And and we also had I think the politics of the country has become terrifically stale, and we're at this moment of great transition now, and who knows, politics is like a pendulum too, but
Mm.
um that's so that's pretty much where Salt has been. So this tiny microscopic press has had a lot of good luck, and some wonderful authors. I mean, that's why you get up in the morning, is to work with the authors.
Yeah.
Um, and we've had a really good run building readerships. Actually, I mean, we most of the people forget with publishing, they think that it's all about writers, but actually it points the opposite direction. Your main
Yeah.
interest is in readers,
Readers.
and you're that, it's not that you're controlling quality and the gateway into being published. What you're doing is actually opening the doors to readers to allow them in,
Yeah.
and you try and make a little bit of money out of that.
Yeah.
um so we've definitely been through a tough patch, but we're kind of climbing our way out. We've seen growth of about 40% in the past year and a half, but from a very low base. And I think it'll probably take us about 5 years to get back to where we were,
Yeah.
if we have a bit of luck. Publishing is also all about luck, you know.
Yeah.
Well, an old colleague of mine used to say, all it is sophisticated gambling, and there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
You bet your money, and you hope that something will, that the public will respond to it. Most trade publishing is like that, actually.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I'd say it's not easy. But look, it's going since 1999. It's a long time, so it's
yeah,
hopefully it'll go for
yeah,
another, well, as long as it can. Anyway, that sounds fantastic.
yeah. Yeah, I've got no wish to give up on it. In fact, I'm quite excited about it. This year's list is amazing. So, I'm fired up about that.
Brilliant. Very good. I'm just conscious we have a minute left, so I just want to thank you for coming on, Chris, to the podcast, and it's been great to chat to you and get to know the man behind Modern Fog. So yeah, hopefully we'll get to see more work from you in the near future. I'm sure you're working on
Yeah,
plenty of things. So
yeah, I absolutely.
thanks a mil, and be sure to check out Chris and his work, guys. Okay, and be sure to like and give us a follow as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you very much indeed. Take care.